Julia, we had to make some tough cuts. Hope you understand. Love you. The text blinked on my phone like a slap disguised as affection. No phone call, no explanation. Just a casual line that cut me out of my own sister's wedding. I showed it to my mom at her spotless kitchen counter. She barely looked up from the seating chart pin, circling a cousin's name. "It's just a wedding," she said, voice light, as if she were reminding me not to spill milk. "Don't make a big deal." My throat went tight. "I'm her sister," I whispered the words, tasting foreign. But she didn't flinch, didn't even look at me. Something inside me shifted clean final like a door clicking shut. I pushed my chair back. The legs scraped against the floor, a sound sharper than anything my mother had said. I stood up and walked out. Before I tell you everything that followed, drop a comment with where you're watching from. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, hit that like button. It lets me know I'm not alone out here. And if you want more stories like this, make sure to subscribe because trust me, it only gets more intense from here. It wasn't always like this. Or maybe it was, and I just didn't have the words to name it. Growing up, Charlotte was the sparkler, bright dazzling, held up for everyone to admire. I was the matchstick she burned down to stay lit. I remember when we were 10 and 12, our backyard 4th of July barbecue. Charlotte wore a white sundress with little blue stars twirling until the skirt lifted like a halo. Mom clapped and called her my little firework. I was in the corner with my knees streaked green from grass stains holding the lighter fluid, the reason the grill even caught flame. Nobody noticed my hands smelled like smoke the rest of the night. By high school, the pattern had become muscle memory. When Charlotte forgot her lines in the school play, I mouthed them from the audience until her lips found the words. When she bombed a chemistry exam, I stayed up all night building her flashcards, then sat across the kitchen table quizzing her while she rolled her eyes. She passed. I got grounded for skipping my own homework. At family dinners, my role was quiet choreography. I'd bake the pies, scrub the counters, set the table with the good silver. Mom would beam at Charlotte as she told stories about her internship, her boyfriend, her plans. Dad would nod sipping his beer, and I'd catch my reflection in the spoon-warped, elongated, almost unrecognizable. I smiled anyway. That was my job, to keep the background neat so the spotlight shone clear. The sacrifices didn't feel like sacrifices at the time. They felt like currency. If I gave enough, maybe I'd be seen. When Charlotte's boyfriend dumped her junior year, she curled up on my dorm bed, tears soaking through my pillow. I peeled oranges in perfect spirals and fed her slices like communion. She sniffled, whispered, "You're the best sister," and I believed her. For that moment, it felt worth it. But moments don't build a life. They evaporate. And I was always left with the residue. Like the night she moved apartments in the dead of January. Wind howled down the Chicago streets, sharp as razors. I carried boxes until my fingers went numb, slipping on black ice while Charlotte laughed about how quirky city life was. By the time I lugged her mattress up 3 flights of narrow stairs, my back screamed. She stood at the top landing clapping like I was her mover, not her sister. "Thanks, Jules. I don't know what I'd do without you." But she never asked what it cost me to always be her answer. Money was another language between us. She'd call voice-trembling rents late again. "Can you spot me just this once?" Just this once turned into 3 months, turned into never paid back. I told myself it didn't matter. Family isn't about balancing accounts. But late at night, as I stared at my checking balance hovering near zero, I felt the weight of every just once piling on top of me like bricks. Mom never saw it that way. "You're the responsible one," she'd say, her voice dipped in sugar but sharp underneath. "Charlotte just needs a little extra help." As if being responsible meant being invisible. As if my reward for competence was silence. I think about Christmas morning 2 years ago. The tree twinkled with white lights, the smell of pine needles mixing with cinnamon rolls. Charlotte unwrapped a necklace from Mom and Dad silver with tiny diamonds that caught every flicker. I opened my box to find oven mitts floral padded practical. "You're always baking," Mom said brightly. "We knew you'd use them." Charlotte laughed at the diamonds glittering at her throat. I laughed too because that's what we do when the punchline is ourselves. The signs were always there. The cracked photo frame on the mantel holding a family portrait where I stood half-shadowed at the edge. The way Charlotte's milestones turned into banquets while mine barely got candles on a cupcake. The way Mom said, "Don't be dramatic," whenever I tried to speak. Still, I held on. Because love in my dictionary was spelled sacrifice. I thought if I stacked enough good deeds one day someone would count them. One day someone would say, "Julia, you matter as much as she does." But that day never came. So when Charlotte's text arrived, tough cuts, "Hope you understand," I shouldn't have been shocked. It was just the latest receipt in a ledger I never agreed to keep. But knowing that didn't stop the sting. My chest tightened like someone had folded me into a paper crane and left me perched on the edge of the table. Fragile, decorative, disposable. And when I showed Mom, expecting at least one gasp of outrage, one flicker of maternal defense, she didn't even put her pen down. She circled another name on the seating chart. "It's just a wedding," she said, like it was just a Tuesday, just a cloud, just another moment where I didn't count. That was when I realized this wasn't about the wedding. It was about every small disappearance before it. Every time I taped a broken lamp cord to keep the light going, every time I swallowed the lump in my throat, so the evening stayed smooth, every time I paid the bill so someone else could order dessert. The wedding was simply the curtain drop the moment the audience goes home and you realize you've been alone on stage all along. I left her kitchen with my hands shaking, not from anger, but from clarity. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like space. Space I could finally fill with my own voice. When I left my mother's house that night, the cold air hit me like a dare. Chicago winters don't forgive. The wind sliced across my cheeks, tugging tears from my eyes whether I wanted them or not. But I wasn't crying. Not really. The sting in my chest had settled into something sharper, something clean, like glass after you wipe the dust off. I rode the train home, forehead pressed against the rattling window, the city lights blurred into streaks of gold and red, a carousel spinning too fast. Around me, commuters scrolled their phones, their faces pale squares in the reflection. For the first time in my life, I felt like I wasn't riding toward anyone. I was riding away. At my apartment, I kicked off my boots, letting them tumble sideways near the door. The quiet was thick. Normally, I would have filled it by calling Charlotte back, smoothing things over, telling myself it wasn't personal. That's what the responsible one does, absorbs, forgives, resets. But I didn't touch my phone. I let it sit on the table, buzzing once twice, with notifications I didn't care to check. Instead, I opened my laptop. The screen lit up the room blue light, making my hands look ghostly. My fingers hovered over the keys, not sure what they were searching for until I typed Caribbean resorts. The images filled the page like a promise white sand that looked poured from heaven turquoise water so clear you could drown just staring balconies draped in sunlight. It felt absurd at first. Me, the girl who balanced everyone else's emergencies, even measuring groceries by how much rent money Charlotte owed me looking at first-class vacations. I almost closed the tab. Almost. But then I heard my mother's voice in my head. "It's just a wedding. Don't be dramatic." The phrase replayed, and suddenly the search results weren't a fantasy. They were an answer. If they could cut me out of something I'd earned by birthright, then I could cut myself into something better. If they didn't want me at their table, I could build my own overlooking the ocean. Scrolling felt like oxygen. Each click carried me further from their world, closer to mine. The resorts blurred together until one stopped me, cold glass walls opening to the sea linen sheets that looked softer than forgiveness. A private butler. The price tag was enough to make my stomach knot. But then I thought about all the money I'd poured into Charlotte's crises, rent payments, car repairs, last-minute loans. This time, the expense wouldn't vanish into someone else's silence. It would build me. My hand didn't shake when I hit book now. The confirmation screen bloomed like a secret sunrise. Departure 2 days. Destination freedom. I didn't stop there. I clicked over to flights, scrolled past economy without hesitation, and chose first class. Extra legroom reclining seat champagne before takeoff. If Charlotte could have her princess day, I could have mine at 30,000 feet. The next morning, my suitcase sat open on the bed like an invitation. I filled it slowly, savoring each choice. Breezy dresses that whispered against my legs, wide-brimmed hats that could double as armor swimsuits in colors I usually reserved for scrolling past in catalogs. I threw in a pair of heels I didn't need just because they looked good sitting on top of folded linen. Every item I packed felt like a line I was redrawing. I wasn't preparing to attend her wedding. I was preparing to attend my own life. By the second night, the suitcase was zipped. My phone buzzed again, Charlotte, of course. Then Mom. Then both at once. We need to talk. Julia, don't be childish. The messages stacked up like bricks I was no longer willing to carry. I flipped the phone face down and poured myself a glass of wine. On the coffee table sat a stack of envelopes, bills, credit card offers, junk mail. One of them caught my eye, a wedding invitation from a coworker embossed with gold lettering. I slid it open, ran my fingers over the raised ink. Someone else thought I was worth a seat. Worth the price of paper. Worth the stamp. I smiled and set it aside. The night before my flight, I sat by the window watching snow feather down under the street lamp. For once, I didn't feel left out. I felt excused, like the universe had written me a permission slip and signed it in frost. At the airport, I checked in without looking back. The boarding pass felt heavy in my hand, not from weight, but from meaning. I ordered an overpriced latte, took a sip, and let myself enjoy it without calculating how many favors that money could have covered. When I stepped onto the plane, the first-class cabin gleamed like another world. Wide leather seats, folded blankets waiting like promises. I slid into mine, stretched my legs, and exhaled a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding for years. As the plane roared down the runway, I pulled out my phone, snapped a photo of the champagne glass in my hand. Skyline shrinking below. Caption cut from the list, but still living large. The likes trickled in before the wheels left the ground. I set the phone aside, leaned back, and let the engines lift me into air. For the first time, I wasn't chasing anyone. I was chasing myself. The Caribbean air hit me the moment I stepped off the plane, warm, salted, carrying hibiscus and something sweet I couldn't name. It clung to my skin, melted the last shards of Chicago's winter from my bones. By the time the black SUV dropped me at the resort, I already felt lighter, like I'd left behind not just a city, but a role I'd never asked to play. The lobby smelled of polished wood and ocean breeze. Palm trees rose like columns, their fronds shifting in a rhythm that didn't demand anything from me. A concierge pressed a chilled towel into my hand, then guided me through glass doors to my suite. When I stepped inside, I froze. Floor-to-ceiling windows stretched open to turquoise water. White linen sheets whispered on a king-sized bed. A balcony leaned toward the horizon as if daring me to breathe deeper. I set my suitcase down and walked straight to the balcony. The ocean sprawled infinite and careless. For once, I wanted to be careless too. That night, I didn't unpack in neat piles. I flung dresses across chairs, kicked sandals under the bed. I ordered room service at midnight just because I could. Fluffy pancakes, tropical fruit coffee so smooth it felt illegal. I ate on the balcony toes, brushing the wood, watching waves break like applause. The morning of Charlotte's wedding, I woke not to frantic group texts or family voices pounding at the door, but to sunlight pouring through glass, staining the sheets gold. I stretched, laughed out loud, and ordered another indulgent breakfast before I even stood up. I knew exactly what I was doing. Every photo I took wasn't just a souvenir, it was a message. Not to them directly, but to the world we shared. Instagram became my stage. First, post me in oversized sunglasses martini glass, tilted infinity pool, stretching into the sea. Caption: turns out I'm allergic to wedding drama. Within minutes, the likes stacked up. Comments rolled in queen behavior. Wish I was there. You're glowing. I scrolled lazily, sun on my skin, and felt the irony. Strangers and acquaintances saw me clearer than my own family ever had. The phone buzzed again this time, not with likes, but with Mom's number. I flipped it face down, sliding it under a paperback novel I'd brought. My silence wasn't absence. It was control. By noon, I wandered down to the beach. The sand was warm sugar under my feet. Waves licked at my ankles, tugging playfully as if to say stay. A steel drum band played somewhere in the distance, soft and unhurried. I let the rhythm seep into me. Another buzz, this time a text. Are you really missing your sister's wedding for this? You're being petty. From Mom, of course. I raised my phone, framed the View White Sand turquoise water cocktail in hand, and snapped a photo, sent it back with no caption. Then I toggled Do Not Disturb. Silence bloomed thick and satisfying. Later that afternoon, I treated myself to the spa. Hot stones pressed along my spine, their heat seeping into places I hadn't realized were frozen. The masseuse didn't ask me about family, didn't ask me to fix anything. She just moved in quiet, efficient strokes, leaving me lighter with every pass. By the time I emerged, skin-glowing hair damp from eucalyptus steam, my phone was a hive of unread notifications. Charlotte, Mom, even cousins who never spoke to me otherwise. I scrolled through the previews. Where are you? This is selfish. You'll regret this. Each one felt less like a rope pulling me back, and more like proof I'd finally stepped free. That night, as the sun dipped into the horizon, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood barefoot on the balcony. The sea reflected fire purple bleeding into orange into gold. My phone lit up again. I let it ring until it stopped. Then, with one deliberate motion, I blocked Charlotte. Then Mom. Then the rest of the family numbers I could recognize. It wasn't cruel. It was necessary. For years, my phone had been their emergency hotline. Lost keys, late rent, heartbreaks, arguments. My number was the one they dialed when they needed a fixer. Tonight, I cut the line. I sat on the balcony glass, raised like a toast. To overreacting, I whispered. The word no longer stung. It sparkled. If they wanted to call my boundaries dramatic, then dramatic would taste like champagne against an ocean breeze. The next day, I wandered into town, bought myself a pair of earrings from a local artisan, tiny silver shells, handmade imperfect. They glinted in the sun like something reclaimed. At lunch, I paid the bill without flinching. Not because I had to, but because I chose to. Choice tastes different than obligation. Sweeter. That evening, I opened my laptop again. My return flight blinked on the screen. I hovered over confirm, but instead clicked cancel. Then I booked another week. The confirmation email chimed like freedom in my inbox. I didn't send a group text. I didn't announce it. My silence was announcement enough. By staying gone, I was saying what I'd never dared in words I won't be your glue anymore. If the cracks show, that's not my fault. Back on the balcony, I sipped something blue with a tiny umbrella and let the waves carry away whatever guilt lingered. Each crash against the shore sounded like punctuation. Done. 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 For once, my life wasn't about who needed me. It was about who I wanted to be. And God, it felt good. The first text came just as the sun melted into the Caribbean Sea. My glass of wine glowed rose gold in the light, and the waves sighed against the shore like a lullaby. I had the balcony doors flung open the air, thick with hibiscus, when my phone buzzed. Mom, call me. It's an emergency. I rolled my eyes and set the phone face down. Everything was an emergency to her: burnt toast, a late florist, the wrong shade of ribbon. I wasn't about to trade ocean air for panic disguised as duty. 30 seconds later, another buzz. Cousin Evan, you're not going to believe this. Call me now. Then, Charlotte herself. Where are you? I need you. Need me. The audacity almost made me laugh out loud. 2 weeks ago, I was disposable. Now, I was indispensable. I let the screen go black. I was halfway through my second glass when Evan's message lit up again. The groom left. I froze. The words blinked on the screen like a plot twist in a bad soap opera. I typed back, "What do you mean?" Left. His reply came instantly. Big fight during the reception. He stormed out. Gone. No one knows where. For a moment, I just sat there listening to the waves crash, thinking maybe the universe really did keep score. Somewhere inside me, a faint voice whispered, "Don't enjoy this." But another voice, the one that had been quiet too long, laughed. "Karma's a beach. And you're sitting on one." Messages piled up like falling dominoes. Uncle Ray and Dad apparently exploded into a shouting match over family reputation. Guests filmed the chaos on their phones. Grandma Ruth cried so hard they had to carry her to another room. The bar shut down early because people were fighting. It sounded less like a wedding and more like a season finale. Then Charlotte's text again. Please pick up. I need your help. The old Julia the fixer, the smoother the one who always rushed in would have answered. She would have been pacing the bridal suite by now, handing out tissues, rewriting vows on cocktail napkins, doing CPR on a family already flatlined. But that, Julia was gone. She was sitting barefoot on a balcony, salt on her lips glass in her hand. I snapped a photo wine glass against the ocean at dusk and captioned it, busy enjoying my overreaction. I hit post, set the phone face down again, and let silence finish the conversation. The next morning, Melissa's name lit up. She was the only cousin I ever trusted, the one who never spun gossip into knives. Her text. Okay, I know you're ignoring everyone, but you have to hear this. Call me. You'll love it. I dialed. She picked up on the first ring, breathless. Julia, oh my God. Are you sitting down? I laughed, stretching across the white linen bed. I'm lying down in a luxury suite overlooking the ocean. Think I can handle it. Good, she said, because it's a train wreck back here. The groom gone. Like coat still on his chair, ring box still in his pocket, gone. Apparently Charlotte cornered him about something in front of the groomsmen. Full-on screaming match. He just walked out the front door. I grinned into the phone. That's poetic. Oh, it gets better. Melissa's voice fizzed with glee. Your dad and Uncle Ray went at it in the middle of the dance floor, yelling about who was embarrassing the family more. People recorded it. It's going to hit Facebook any second. I nearly spilled my coffee. Please tell me someone posted already. Not yet. But Aunt Linda sobbed into the centerpiece. Grandma Ruth stood up Julia, and told Charlotte this whole thing happened because she didn't invite you. I bolted upright. Grandma said that. Out loud, word for word, Melissa confirmed. She pointed at her in front of the entire table and said, If you'd treated your family better, you wouldn't be alone in your wedding dress right now. I clapped a hand over my mouth, trying not to burst into hysterical laughter. That's beautiful. And then Melissa could barely breathe. Your mom overheard Aunt Lisa agreeing with Grandma, and now those two aren't speaking. Meanwhile, Charlotte locked herself in the bridal suite, throwing things, flowers, champagne bottles, who knows. Her bridesmaids looked traumatized. The image was so absurd I had to set my cup down before I choked. You're making this up. I swear on my life. Melissa was cackling now. It's the apocalypse, Julia. And guess what? They're blaming you, saying if you'd been there, you would have fixed it. I leaned back against the pillows, grinning so wide my cheeks ached. Melissa, do you know the best part? What I don't care. She laughed so hard I thought the line might cut out. God, I love you for that. I ended the call, feeling lighter than I had in years. For once, I wasn't the firefighter sprinting into someone else's blaze. I was on the shore watching the flames from a safe distance, cocktail in hand. By noon, more numbers I didn't recognize lit my phone. Unknown. Please call your mother. We need to fix this. Another, your sister is devastated. Another, be the bigger person. I deleted them all. Then Melissa sent one more text, heads up. Your mom's trying to gather the family for a discussion when you get back. I laughed out loud, startling the woman on the lounger next to me. A discussion was code for ambush guilt disguised as therapy. I thumbed out my reply. Thanks for the warning. I won't be there. Within 5 minutes, my flight home was canceled and my suite extended another week. The confirmation email chimed like a hymn. For years, my family had been a chessboard where I was expected to play pawn, knight, queen, whatever piece they needed. Now I wasn't on the board at all, and from this side of the ocean, the power struggle didn't look like a battle. It looked like freedom. The emails started piling up the moment I extended my stay. Formal invitations disguised as olive branches, family discussion. Please attend. Subject lines dripping with guilt like candle wax. I deleted them one by one, watching the trash folder fill like an unmarked grave. But Melissa's texts slipped through her updates, threaded with equal parts gossip and warning. Your mom is pacing the kitchen again. Charlotte's trying to plan a makeup ceremony. Grandma's refusing to show up. Each message confirmed what I already knew: their world was unraveling without me, and for the first time I wasn't rushing in with tape and scissors. When I finally flew back to Chicago, February, air clawed at my skin, a shock after Caribbean warmth. My suitcase bumped over the slush as I dragged it up the steps to my apartment. Waiting inside my mailbox was a small padded envelope handwritten in Grandma Ruth's neat looping script. I tore it open, expecting maybe a card. Instead, a string of pearls slipped into my palm, cool and weighty. A note folded twice smelled faintly of rosewater. Julia, these belonged to my mother. I always planned to give them to the granddaughter who carried herself with the most grace. That's you, not because you stayed quiet, but because you finally stopped. Love, Grandma. The words blurred as my throat closed. For years I'd mistaken silence for grace, but here was proof that leaving too could be dignified. 2 nights later, I found myself at my parents' house more out of curiosity than duty. Mom had insisted on a discussion. The living room looked staged for peace talks, coffee table, cleared chairs, pulled into a tight circle teapot steaming between us. Charlotte sat stiff in an armchair, her mascara smudged into bruised shadows. Julia, Mom began, her voice low and coaxing. "We just want to understand why you cut myself out." I interrupted, setting my bag beside me. "I didn't." "You did." Her smile faltered. "It was complicated." "It wasn't," I said simply. The pearls around my neck glinted under the lamp. "It was a choice." "Yours." Charlotte flinched as if slapped. "You abandoned me on the most important day of my life." I almost laughed. "You abandoned me long before that." The room went silent. The teapot hissed faintly, releasing steam like a warning. Mom reached for her mug, fingers trembling. "We just want to move past this." "No," I said, calm as stone. "You want me to go back to fixing things so you don't have to look at what's broken, but I'm done playing that part." Charlotte's eyes filled with tears, but I didn't move to catch them. I let them fall where they belonged. For a long time, no one spoke. Then, unexpectedly, Dad cleared his throat. He hadn't said a word the whole evening, just sat there with his calloused hands, folded eyes, flicking between us like he was refereeing a game he never signed up for. Finally, he said almost to himself, "You were right to walk away." The words dropped into the room like a stone into still water. Mom blinked, startled. Charlotte's mouth fell open. But God, I felt the echo reverberate all the way through me. Not an apology, not a plea. Just acknowledgement. The simplest, rarest currency. I stood, slipping my coat over my shoulders. That's all I needed to hear. "Julia," Mom started, her voice breaking, but I shook my head. "No more discussions," I said. "Not when the conclusion's already written." I picked up my bag, the pearls cool against my collarbone, and walked toward the door. Behind me, the silence stretched taut, broken only by the faint tick of the grandfather clock. Each second was another step away from their chaos, another echo of my father's words anchoring themselves inside me. When I stepped out into the night air, it was snowing lightly. Flakes clung to my coat, melted against my cheeks. For once, the cold didn't feel punishing. It felt clean. I didn't look back at the house. I didn't need to. The confrontation had ended not in shouts or slammed doors, but in something quieter and far more final recognition. And recognition, I realized, was worth more than any seat at any table. The snow kept falling as I drove home that night, city lights bleeding into the windshield like watercolor. My father's words replayed in my head with every red light, every turn. "You were right to walk away." Not a full apology. Not a miracle cure, but enough. Enough to remind me that I wasn't invisible, not to everyone. Back in my apartment, the quiet hummed like a friend. I slipped off my coat, unfastened the pearls from my neck, and held them in my palm. They felt heavier than they looked, like they carried decades of voices, women who had chosen silence, women who hadn't, and now me standing in the middle, finally choosing my own path. For years, my mornings had started with someone else's crisis. Charlotte's voicemail about rent, Mom's text about family drama, even coworkers asking me to cover their shifts. Always another emergency, always another fire. But the next morning, when the winter sun pried its way through the blinds, I woke without dread. No buzzing phone, no guilt, Just the quiet hum of a coffee pot and the smell of toast. I sat at my tiny kitchen table pearls coiled like a comma beside my mug and thought about what it meant to build a life not around other people's needs, but my own desires. It felt foreign, like speaking a new language, but also thrilling, like finding out you've been bilingual all along. Melissa texted around noon, family meetings canceled. Too many people refused to come. Charlotte's furious, Mom's sulking. Grandma's holding court like she's Queen of England. Proud of you, Jules. I smiled and typed back thanks. Tell Grandma her pearls fit perfectly. That night, instead of scrolling through frantic messages, I booked another trip, nothing as extravagant as the Caribbean, but enough. A long weekend in New Orleans, jazz powdered sugar warm nights. I wanted to keep feeding the version of myself that wasn't afraid to leave the table. On Sunday, while my family argued over seating charts for a wedding that no longer existed, I took a walk by Lake Michigan. The air bit at my face, but the water stretched endless and steady, same as the ocean. I tossed a pebble into the waves, watched the ripples expand outward circles upon circles until they vanished. That's what walking away had been: an impact, a shift, an echo that didn't disappear so much as transform. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the fixer, the background, the receipt under the photo frame, keeping everything steady. I felt like the main character. My story wasn't about who I saved anymore. It was about who I became. And the strangest, sweetest part, I didn't hate them. Not Charlotte, not Mom. I pitied them a little, maybe. But mostly I felt distance, a kind of clean horizon where their chaos couldn't reach me. Let them plan another ceremony, another dinner, another ambush. I'd be somewhere else sipping coffee, booking flights, living a life that didn't require me to shrink so they could shine. As I stood at the water's edge, the city skyline behind me and the lake stretching out ahead, I raised my coffee cup like a toast. To freedom, to peace, to pearls, to finally stepping out of the role I never asked for. And maybe to anyone who's ever been told they were overreacting, let me say this. Sometimes the best reaction is to walk away and mean it. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family or been told you were too dramatic for asking to be respected, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. And if you connected with mine, hit that like button. It helps more than you know. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this one, because sometimes the only way out of betrayal is through telling the truth.